Tiff, give us your thoughts on F1 2024. Are you excited by it? Because
no, I'm almost giving up on Formula One. I'm saying it's really the aero people rule Formula One. I think it's a very sad thing.
Yeah.
I was so disappointed with Brawn. The new set of regulations with ground effect was supposed to come out. There was even talk of losing DRS completely. This was going to be the new regulations that cars could follow closer and race.
Yeah.
And when they came out, started porpoising up and down, which I experienced back in 1982 in Grand Prix cars. I had that first porpoising with the original sound, And I thought, well, Brawn, how come Brawn didn't see that coming? He's a brilliant aerodynamicist. He must have realised every team will want their car as low to the ground as possible. And then, of course, if the throat chokes out, bounces at all. So he knew that they'd have to have huge stiff suspension, which is terrible for the drivers. And then he put the huge front wing on the thing, and then they had to have DRS. And so it was just so disappointing that the Formula were now racing its third year. If you look at IndyCar, which I love, I just tell everyone to watch IndyCar. For God's sake, if you're bored with Formula One, stay on. It's usually Sunday night on Sky Sports 1 straight after a Grand Prix. And you see the drivers correcting and driving the cars. And they're ground effect. They've limited the amount of ground effect, so they haven't got huge grip round corners. And going back to, the one about 10 years ago when they introduced a new Formula One because they thought we had to be 5 seconds a lap fast. Remember that famous phrase? We want cars 5 seconds. Who does?
Why?
Yeah. Why?
The best races are when it's damp or wet and the cars are 10 seconds a lap slower than they are in the dry.
Yeah.
And they produce the best racing.
So what would be your recipe? What thing or things would you do?
Simply, I'd go, because obviously we can't have spec cars because we want constructors. I'd just go standardised front and rear wings, and most of all, standard brakes. So you'd have some right old solid, useless pads in your brakes.
Yeah.
It would take 200 yards to slow instead of 100 yards.
Yeah.
So, and let them play with everything else almost, but give them all the same brakes, the same front. That's the simplest way.
So you could follow a car through the corner onto the straight and then outbrake it at the end.
And outbrake. But you look at the other thing that depresses me so much is that 2026 regulations, active aero, they're talking because they got 50% electric power, 50% fuel, they've got to get the power back, regen. And so to go fast up in a straight line, they're going to have these wings that go down as, Of course, Newey didn't like the look of the regulations initially, but of course, I've thought about it. I quite like these new rules. Well, of course you do, Adrian, because they're made for you. I should imagine the next Newey car, the new regulations will be about 5 seconds a lap, because he'll come up with some most amazing devices.
So what do you say to those who say Formula One is a technology formula? It allows manufacturers to showcase their technology, and unless you have these things which manufacturers can use effectively as marketing messages, you lose the big money from the sport. Would you be sorry to see them go, or do you think the sport would be healthier?
No, because I think the sport would come back. I think the likes of Williams and the smaller teams and Formula 2 teams that are just racing teams, the racing teams would still come back. You look at IndyCar, there's an engine choice, otherwise all the same cars. You still need the best aerodynamicists, the best engineers to make the best out of a spec car.
Yeah.
The lesser teams are 2 seconds a lap slower than the what's the names up front. Well, the names now straight off. So you still need all those engineers. And the problem is you don't need 3,000 people working in your factory back at Milton Keynes. Or how many is another current, what are we quoting now for a current Formula One team staff?
Well, they had a little bit of a cull, didn't they? Because
the cost cap.
Yeah.
So trouble is people are going to lose jobs. I was sort of say, well, if you lose jobs, if you'd let 6 more cars in, then the people that lose the jobs in the 10 teams that are so, that's the other thing I hate about Formula One, the way those 10 teams are just hanging on to their little clique. If you allow 3 more teams to join, well, that's sort of 300 or 400 people that could lose their job in a big team and go to a smaller team. So this argument about, you've got to keep all the jobs. I appreciate if you're working, in a Formula One team now, you don't want to lose your job, but not allowing Andretti was just almost the final kick in the teeth for Formula One, to my mind, because my year in Formula One, my 1980 year, when the 30 cars used to turn up, try to make a Grand Prix, 41 drivers had a go at being a Grand Prix. 41. At least people had a chance to have a go in a little team, tried to qualify like I did.
From a driver's point of view, Tiff, do you think a typical racing driver would prefer to race something that would slide a bit, that took a bit of manhandling?
I'm sure they would.
That was
I'm
physical?
sure they'd love it. We know Grosjean.
Yeah.
He's spouting about IndyCar, loving it. He
Yeah.
loved going out to do IndyCar.
Yeah.
Rallying, your sport.
Yeah.
You see all these superstars, they get into a Mark II Escort for a rally.
And they're having the
they're
time.
in heaven.
Yes.
But look, I can't imagine how much they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
Look at them when they, how many drivers have you spoken to, professional racing drivers, on the grid at Goodwood, who will say to you, "Yeah, I race cars for a living, but this is what I do for fun.
Yeah,
I race modern cars for a living, but skidding a 50, skidding a Lister around Goodwood or something like that. It's about as much fun as you can have with the steering wheel in your hands, isn't it?"
Absolutely. But now I would say in Jim Clark's day it was 80% driver, 10% car, and now it's 80% car, 10% driver. The drivers can't make a difference because you look at the gaps on the grids. I mean, Clark could be 2 seconds a lap quicker than a very, very good co-driver. You look at 1976, 77, wonderful grids with Brabham Alfa Romeos and Lotus, all different colours, and you look at them coming down to Tars, a great photo. And the teammates are often, 1 second and 1/10. You don't get a sort of 2x2x2 of a manufacturer because the better driver could make a second a lap difference in qualifying. And now it's just 0.2 or 0.3. And if you're 0.4 slower, you're a really
out.
bad driver.
Yeah.
So you can't see the brilliant driver like you used to be able to tell talent so much easier because they stood out by being so much quicker than someone in the same car. Now you see, I don't think Rosberg was anything like as good as Hamilton. On certain weekends, by grafting away, he could get his Mercedes the same speed as Hamilton and race with Hamilton.
He shouldn't have been anywhere near him, though, should he?
Shouldn't have been anywhere near him, no.